I
Sure.
think it's recording. Yeah, it is recording. So let's just jump in.
All right. Sounds good.
Awesome, man. And so, so this is the first time that we're chatting ever in person ever. But I've seen, I mean, we've been in kind of communication for the past almost year since we're both pretty active on the Facebook and everything. I think one thing that's really cool about, just me versus you and just both of our tutoring is from what I've just observed, and again, I don't have a lot of information, but just what I've observed and seen, I think there's a lot of things that we might agree on, but there's also a lot of things we might disagree on. I think one thing we would probably both agree on, though, is just kind of in terms of studying for the LSAT, the emotional impact it can have on someone or the emotional weight it can carry. And personally, in my opinion, I feel like a lot of people, and it's not their fault, but I feel like a lot of people, when they get into studying, they don't necessarily realize the toll it could take on you in terms of your daily schedule and your mind and kind of your well-being about the future and how you look at it. Just because it is such a big deal. And right now, as of now, at least, it does carry such a big weight,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially in a time when people are already stressed from a million different things. It affects different people differently, So, I mean, some people, it's a breeze. It's just another day in class or whatever. But that's pretty rare, I find. In my experience, there's different types of anxieties and worries that it brings up in people. And I guess one type that I've seen is one type, which is really I would say it's the most debilitating that I've seen, is when a person just is so down on themselves whenever they get something wrong or whenever they don't get anything, and they can just totally quit. And everybody has this to some degree, because none of us want to get things wrong and be wrong and whatever, but everybody wants to move forward and get a 170 and all this stuff, or whatever their goal is. And but some people just really can't have a hard time, at least, getting used to getting things wrong, which I think there's no way to prepare for this test without getting things wrong and learning from your errors. I don't think this is a textbook kind of thing where you can just read a book, not only because such a thing doesn't exist, but part of the reason it doesn't exist is because it wouldn't be helpful if it did exist. It'd be like if Michael Jordan wrote a book about how to play basketball and you read it and you didn't ever play basketball, you'd still suck,
No, you're right.
And so, one type of emotional outlook or whatever, that's one I've seen. And one thing I say to students is, you gotta be excited every time you get something wrong. If you got something right, why did you even do it? You already know how to do it. That's just wasted time. When you get something wrong, that's the exciting part, where, okay, I must not know something that I could know, and then I'm going to learn now, or I'm going to try my hardest to learn.
Right.
And so anyway, what experience have you had with that type of personality kind of problem or issue or others?
I mean, and like the two things that you kind of said that kind of ring a bell in my mind is, first, like, I agree with you 100%. The test really is a lot of learning by doing. And so I think, I don't do this all the time, but it kind of is almost like analogous to life in a way. Like, a lot of things you learn about in life are just by experience, trial and error. You learn from your mistakes, right? And so I think it's hard. I mean, it sucks making mistakes. No one wants to do it. But I think if you could just dive in, make those errors, and like you said, be excited about it and say, okay, yes, I got this wrong, but it's okay. It's just a practice question. Why did I get it wrong? How can I learn best from it? How can I move forward from it and learn from it so I don't make that same mistake again? I mean, that's the kind of spirit to have. And I think, and just in terms of getting emotionally ready, one of the biggest things I see a lot kind of on my side of things is where, a student comes in, they're good and excited, and I say, okay, today we're going to learn, we're going to learn paradox questions, for instance, right? So we work on paradox questions. They've never seen it before. They've never do them. They do them the next day, and they're like, Brad, I suck. I only got 6 out of 10. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, yes, you missed 4, but you couldn't do any yesterday, And so it's like, you're not going to be perfect after the first day, and that's okay. I mean, I don't expect you to be perfect, right? I just want you to start learning. If you get 4 wrong, it's fine. Just let's look at them, let's review them, let's learn from them, right? And we'll try again. I think a lot of people are really fast to try to move toward perfection, and that's really not. I mean, sure, you should aim and you should strive for perfection, but I'm always about like just kind of baby steps with this kind of thing. And so if you're at 140, I want you to aim for 170, right? Like, I want you to have those aspirations. I think you can do it. I think it's totally possible. It's been done before. But I want you to aim for next week to be a 142. You know, I want the next week to be a 144. I want you to be proud that you increased 2 points and that you got better at the test. Because those little wins are going to motivate you through your journey. Because for a lot of people, it's going to be a multi-month, at least 3 months, if not more, journey. And you really need those little small wins to carry you forward. And so, yes, 170 is way up there on the ladder, but this week you got a little bit higher. Like, you made progress, and you should be really proud of that. And eventually you will get 10 out of 10. You'll be great. But just as you make mistakes, just keep learning from them, you know? Like you said, if you get everything right, then I don't want to keep working on that with you because you're good. Like, let's go on to the next thing and build up those weaknesses. But you have to be able to confront those weaknesses and be okay emotionally to deal with the problems you have on the test and not feel so good about doing things you're already good at. A lot of times, just for example, you know, I'll say, you know, maybe someone's struggling on reading comp and they're really good at games, and they'll be like, we'll come into a session and they'll say, like, the whole week I did nothing but games. And I'm like, why? And they're like, well, because I'm good at them. I'm like, yeah, you are good, and that's great. I'm glad you're practicing games, but you're good at games. Let's go to this way, because you won't get better at reading comp if you don't practice reading comp, you know? And so I think the overarching theme with that is just, you know, it's tough, but go into your mistakes and go into your fears and your errors just with full force, and that's the way you'll get better, for sure, you know? So.
Yeah. And let's go into it a little bit more deeply if you think you can, or you want to, or if you know even what I'm talking about. But basically, because like we could say, you know, celebrate your errors or whatever, you know, and
Sure.
maybe some students will trust us and just say, okay, they said to do it, let's do it. But other students they're going to hear us. Some of my own students that I tutor hear me, and they just still keep doing it. What is the reason? What are the one reason or the multiple reasons that people are so hard on themselves or whatever? It's expect too much too quickly, and like, can we address those at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think so it's kind of a two-part answer. I think the first part is that it's not that there's misinformation, but I think, again, it's just underestimating how large of a test is. And so a lot of people come in thinking, yeah, I'm at a 145. I'll be able to get to a 160 in a month in no time, and it'll be super easy. I'm just going to study, right? And then they realize that, well, hold on, this test is 3 sections, and each section is actually kind of difficult. And, oh my gosh, this is actually not going to follow the timeline I thought it was. I think just not knowing what they're getting into in the first place in terms of just sheer volume of what you have to learn on the test can be really overwhelming for people. And so that's kind of the first kind of just, they're already feeling overwhelmed. There's a lot going on. Where do I start? What do I use? When should I take the test? The whole application process there's so much going on with it. So that's really overwhelming. And I think, you know, it really just, I think for a lot of people, it's just, you know, if I get a question wrong, I just feel dumb. You know, like I just feel like I'm not good enough. I feel like because like they'll get something wrong, I'll explain it, and they'll say, oh, that makes so much sense. Like, why didn't I see that? I'm like, well, it's challenging, you know? They'll kind of beat themselves up because I think it's really, it should have been obvious when it's not obvious. And so they'll feel kind of like they're less than, or they're not good enough. Or maybe a lot of times the biggest thing is because a lot of people go into LSAT not wanting to become LSAT experts. They want to be a lawyer, right? And that's their dream. And they feel like if they can't get this LSAT thing together, they'll never get that dream career. And that has a big impact on a lot of people. It's like, if I can't get these logic games learned, and first off, I don't know why logic games are even relevant for the test. That's kind of their thought process. Like, this is so dumb. If I can't figure this out, I'm screwed, you know? And it's like, first off, you're not screwed. Like, you're going to be fine. But again, you have to take it step by step. And when I get, you know, one correct on a logic game, that can be really overwhelming for people. It's like, am I even cut out to do this? And it's like, you're probably cut out. It's not that you're not smart enough. Most people, actually, I would say almost everyone could do really, really well on this test. It's not that you're dumb enough. You're not too dumb, or you're not there's no lack of intelligence. It's a skill. You have to learn how to do it, right? And I think a lot of people go and just saying, oh, I'm going to just knock this out in a month and I'll just study really hard and memorize everything and cram for it like I do with everything else. I'll be fine. And it just doesn't work because you can't do that.
Yeah, you said a lot of interesting things. Two things that I remember and want to comment on. One, when I was doing the LSAT, I thought logic games were totally arbitrary and ridiculous. And I was like, this is 10 years ago before I went to law school, when I was studying for the LSAT.
Sure.
And only when I started teaching it and saw people who really struggled with them, did I realize, I came to the conclusion that it's testing something actually very valuable, organizational, somewhat spatial organizational skills are somewhat valuable, but just in general organizational skills.
Sure.
And one of the main things I think also is just going one step at a time instead of 10 steps ahead, where you make 5 errors in not thinking about what you're doing. And totally applies to being a lawyer. I mean, if you do not take it one step at a time, you just assume, oh yeah, that'll be good. I mean, you will be kicked out of the profession. And it happens to many thousands of lawyers every year. And so I wanted to know your thoughts on the logic games. And then also, what was that other thing you said? Well, let's start with that one.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly for me, it's kind of, because I get the question a lot, like if I'm tutoring someone, it's like, well, why am I even learning this? Why is this important? And logic games is always, I can usually defend logical reasoning and reading pretty well. Like, why do you need to know this? Why this is important? Logic games is the one I struggle with. And I agree. I really do think it teaches organization. I think it teaches, taking things step by step and your ability to just follow a set of guidelines and not break them. That's really what I would say for logic games. It teaches those things. I think those things are important. To be honest, I kind of think in terms of, and you might have more thoughts on this too, in terms of lawyerly skills, I think logical reasoning and reading comp are a little bit more valuable, in my opinion. I think logic games are not a total waste of time. Though I'm actually curious about your opinion on this too. I kind of tell people sometimes, I'm like, if they got rid of the logic games part of the test, I don't know how big of a difference it would make. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, who would be disadvantaged is people who don't speak English very well.
That's true. True.
Whether that's good or bad, I don't know, or neutral or whatever. Because that's often their easiest section, because the other stuff is highly focused on English vocab and sort of. They try to get away from the focus on vocab, but they can't too much. So anyway, what would it be like without logic games? I would have said in the past, like, you wouldn't lose anything, like, but I think there's something there. And, when I saw that lawsuit where they were talking about getting rid of logic games in X number of years or whatever, I looked up, what is analytical reasoning? What even is that? That's what they call logic games. Obviously, you know that. And when I looked it up, because who knows what it is? It's just logic games. I don't know. But when I looked it up, it seemed to be logic games. So they said they were going to keep analytical reasoning. And then I was like, well, let me look at what analytical reasoning is. That's logic games. How are you going to do it without logic games? And so, maybe there is another way to do it. I'm not an expert in analytical reasoning or whatever. But it seems that there's a method to the madness on logic games. To me, it seems that way nowadays. One thing you were talking about before is how people, I don't know, there's just certain things that you have to, certain mindset that would allow you to, view one error as, an opportunity instead of a total moment of crisis or something like that. It's sort of, I feel like human beings naturally are very, I feel like the LSAT is part of like a socialization process or a mental training process that's very unnatural. And only if and when you succeed on the LSAT can you even start to think in these ways that are helpful for many people, like, or that are more optimal for your success and growth. And like here's one easy example. Sometimes students tell me, they read something somewhere and they're like, did you know that D and E are 40% of the answer choices? And I'm like, yes, I did, because 2 divided by 5, that's 40%. And they're like, oh shit, right. And LSAT has some percentage things and stuff like that. And but there's other things too. People will just, and it sort of goes with the misinformation thing you said. People will read about this person getting 170 and this person getting 170 and this person getting 170, and it's like, well, I bet a lot of the people that are getting 140s after 3 years of studying aren't posting about their stories, right?
Yeah.
So it's like there's all this selective media and attention and focus and all this stuff. And these are the same, really the same kinds of thinking skills you need to develop to be able to spot flaws and holes in arguments and all this stuff and different interpretations. And so it's really challenging, because to improve, you sort of have to have a basis of knowledge already. And so what is it? It's like a chicken and an egg, but there's still ways to do it, of course. Not exactly like circular, you'll never make progress. But what do you think about that?
I think, and almost even goes back to the logic games thing, which, like, yeah, you're right. Logic games, it's a good thought. Logic games really is a double-edged sword, because some people, their spatial reasoning skills aren't that great, and that could be really a hindrance. But even for some people, like you said, where English is not their first language, or they're just honestly really good at spatial reasoning, or whatever it may be, like, it could really be a great benefit, because it's like, this is gonna be my gimme section, this is my section where I'm gonna excel. But I kind of agree. It's like, and this is kind of the trickiest thing, because I do think, like, literally anyone can succeed on the LSAT, but you're almost kind of right, where it's not circular, right? But it really helps to have a certain level of knowledge before you go into the test, right? And I'm not sure what the prereqs would be before you start studying. I'm not sure if there are any certain prereqs, but yeah, like, if you don't know what the Big Bang Theory is, or if you don't know that, I don't know, like, any just thing that might be the LSAT deems common sense, it could hurt your accuracy on a question, and I'm not, and I don't have the answers to that. I'm not sure, like, I can't say, oh, we'll go read about all the science stuff, because, I mean, I have no idea if that's ever going to be tested. Like, I don't know if that topic's ever going to come up. It's just kind of just,
what are some topics that there's some topics that I've seen so many times that I can probably start listing some that are actually helpful to maybe read a Wikipedia page about, or something like that. What do you have any like that, like, that you sometimes advise students, like, hey, go learn about this actual thing?
One that comes to mind is space.
They talk about space a lot.
Right? They talk about space a lot. They talk about gravity as a concept a lot. They talk about events that we've hypothesized have happened in space. So I think just, learning about, okay, what's the proposed origin of the universe? What's the proposed, or how does gravity work? Or, how does orbiting the sun work? Like, what is the solar system? And some people may be listening and saying, well, that's super common knowledge, but it's like, some people, they don't know that, and that's okay. But that might be something good to learn about.
Besides, the basics of astronomy, and I don't know if that's what it's called. I don't know, cosmology or something.
Something about space, yeah. That's one I can really. I mean, what kind of ones do you think? That's the only one I really think of. I can kind of think of right now, top of my head.
I don't have any plan, but first thing that comes to mind is like global warming.
Okay, environmental stuff, yeah.
Yeah, environmental stuff, global warming.
They talk a lot about pollution and like gas pollution, CO2, methane, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Magnetism.
Okay, yeah. I've seen a few questions about that really throws people off, is like when rocks, if they melt and then recrystallize, the
Yeah,
polarity
yeah,
and lining up with,
yeah.
and that's such a like a specific thing, but the like how Earth's magnetic field shifts and how magnetic North is always shifting, so polarity depends on the time that it melted and refroze, like that kind of stuff. That's so
Hmm.
specific, but I mean, yeah, I've seen that happen a few times too, for sure.
Yeah. Um, I, there's some legal stuff, maybe just basics of the criminal process or something like that.
Yeah,
Um, and perhaps also maybe, I don't know how to phrase this, but of course they're always talking about in the, reading comp different authors, and um, I don't know exactly how to what to say about it, but maybe something like literary explore the basics of like literary
literature.
history,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah, just literature history. Yeah. Um, they talk about plate tectonics a good amount. Just Earth geology, that kind of thing. Um,
Oh, also like maybe like uh, medicine and viruses and heart disease
mm,
and stuff like
yeah,
that.
they talk a lot about heart disease and
Yeah.
cholesterol and that I mean you see that one almost every other test. It's like something about cholesterol, heart disease, or lowering the risk. Or yeah, medicine
Right.
I think is important. I mean, but in my problem, my struggle with that is like, well, yes, this is all important, but it's like, do I just have someone go read like 6 Wikipedia pages, or like
Right.
how do you really solve that issue? Besides, I guess the only thing you could do is kind of explain just as they come up, like, well, what is I don't know, the Big Bang, or what is plate tectonics, what is the mid-ocean ridge, or whatever it may be, just what is all that stuff, and explain as it is. um a lot of times, I'll say like, okay, well, yes, we'll dive into about what magnetic polarity is, but to be honest, I mean, this is one of 3 questions I've ever seen about it. I wouldn't worry too much about it because you might not ever see it again. It's kind of a tricky balance to figure out what they really need to know in terms of what's common sense and then what's not common sense, and whether it's worth worrying about or not.
Yeah, and maybe it's worth mentioning for people who are going to be watching that, like, whenever you come to one of these things, that probably the answer is not, sometimes you can help yourself by learning about the topic, but probably the deeper answer is how can you address this question or this passage without knowing, or if you didn't know, like, what can you do to help
Hmm.
yourself?
I mean,
Um,
yeah, I mean, and I really do try to instill that in people. Like, yes, I would love you to know about tectonics. I would love for you to know about how global warming works. Technically, do you absolutely need to know about it to answer the question? No, you don't. Like, you don't have. Would it be helpful? Yes. But could you visualize? Could you just make up in your head what a mitochondria is and just say it looks like a blob of mucus, and you could probably just visualize that and then get it right? You probably could, And so, as much as I love the education part, I do try to encourage people to listen. At the end of the day, they really are just testing you on the logic. And so, should you see this on test, you don't know what it is, just deep breath, try to just pick something that it might be, and then just try to focus on the logic and focus on that end of it. And you should theoretically be fine.
yeah,
It,
yeah,
it's
that's
it's
one.
scary though, for sure.
Yeah, that's one way to handle it is that often works is, okay, you think you don't know what it is, but you probably have some idea, and just
Yeah,
go with whatever that is,
yeah.
and that works often. Let's go back to the emotional thing for a second.
Hmm.
What kind of things have you done specifically? Actually, well, tell me if I'm right. You seem to be very positive with students almost all the time. And I think that's one thing you probably do to address those kinds of emotional
Yeah.
insecurities, or whatever you would call them.
Hmm.
Um, is there anything specifically other than, like, from what it looks like from the outside, constant positivity?
I mean, it's
Which I'm not saying that's bad or
no,
anything.
no,
I'm
no,
just
no, no, no. I mean, it's
probably good.
tricky. Well, I mean, it's tricky because, like, because it is a balance. Like, I mean, yes, I am. Overall, I'm all about positive. I'm like, listen, you got this. Like, it's optimism, encouragement. You have to, like, I think for a lot of people, they have to know that you actually believe that they can succeed, and it's not just a waste of time. So I always really try to emphasize that, and I talk about my studying journey and how that went, and just trying to give real examples of other people that have been where they are and they succeed too. And like, listen, like, yes, it sucks right now, but if you just stick with it, I promise you'll be fine. And I have a million examples to back that up. And so a lot of my, conversations I have on this end are very positive, and it's like, I try to throw a lot of encouragement their way, which really, really helps, I think. Though I also try not to be fake. And so it's like, I'm going to be realistic at sometimes, like if I don't think you're ready to take this, I want to encourage you that, your life is not over and you can take it again and be fine. But I also don't want you to take a test that you're not ready for. And so I do have to balance that positivity with some realism and just some, being pragmatic. But yeah, I think for a lot of people, it's not even that they can't physically do it. It's just they need someone to push them and guide them and say, you can really do this. And that a lot of times that's all they need to kind of reignite that fire, And so I really, really try to emphasize that because I think it really helps a lot.
I wouldn't know. That's not my style.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
But, I do sometimes, but I told a student the other day, I was like, look, if I were somebody else, I'd write you an essay right now about how you can do this. But, when you're ready to get back to work, I know you're frustrated about this, let me know.
Yeah,
and
it's tough.
And I don't know, probably, I'm not sure if that works better for anybody. I imagine it does. Some people tell me it does. Maybe they would like more encouragement. I'm not sure. I try to err on the side of just staying calm, staying, unbothered,
Right.
Staying totally honest. Hey, you messed this up. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, we can learn about it. But, and I don't know if that's good or bad. That's just sort of how I am. But I think it works well enough. So,
and I think honestly, I don't think either one is necessarily better than the other. I think people have different preferences. Some people, and it depends on the person. It really does. Some people are able and they want like that tough love, like, yes, you messed it up, but when you're ready and tackle again, let me know. I'll be here. I'll be waiting. I'm happy to help you, but you got to figure this or this out first, whatever it may be. I don't know. Whatever it may be. And some people gravitate more toward the positive stuff. And so I think that's kind of the beauty of it. Because we definitely we don't see eye to eye on everything, but I think that's kind of neat almost, because if there were like 8 Brads on the Facebook page, that would be kind of annoying, because it's like, well, there's no options, right? People,
by the way,
mm-hmm.
Do you remember one time this student said on the Facebook group, I forget who it is exactly, but they said, Brad's like the angel on your shoulder and like Troy's like the devil on your
yeah, that was like I do remember that. I remember that. Yeah, but honestly, just in my experience, it's not a bad thing, but it's true. It's like, and there are other places to get too. It's not like Facebook is the only option, but I think that those groups are pretty large, and it's like to see 2 different personalities, 2 different styles. It gives people options, at least if not options for tutoring, it gives them 2 different perspectives, on the same issue. It's like, here's one way you might frame it in your mind. Here's a different way you might frame it that's more positive or more realistic or whatever it may be. I think having those different approaches is really helpful, and just having different options for different people is super helpful. And so I agree with you. I don't know. I've never been like, I'm like scared to be like super, super mean. Like I like, that's just not like my style. I don't let people step all over me, but I really like being positive and encouraging and that kind of thing. And so that's kind of my style. And so I don't know whether, the positive versus the negative, or not negative, but just like the real, I'm not sure what a better style is. I think I probably at the end of the day, what it is, you need a little bit of both, you really do,
Yeah.
it's just finding out what works for each person.
Speaking of like, encouraging and everything,
Mm-hmm.
do you have any feelings at all that like some people are settling with a score that they shouldn't be settling for and moving on to law school, and, in terms of finance coaching, getting into debt, all this stuff, and do you ever tell people like, hey, I don't want to encourage you to do what you're telling me you want to do?
Mm-hmm. How I kind of frame it is kind of like, listen, I am like, you hire me to be your LSAT tutor. So I'm not your life coach. I'm not your mom or whatever it is. Here is my but you're asking me, so here's my opinion. And so if I was in your shoes, I would, and in this case, I would probably wait a year. I would get a higher score because I don't want to have that much law school debt. That would be me, right? I would say, and then I would say, here are my pros, and of course, here are the cons. And if I was you, I would take this route. But at the end of the day, it is your life. You get to pick, and I'm going to support you no matter what. But here's what I would do, and I would probably strongly recommend it. It's something like that, you know. Like I want to give my thought. I don't want them to think I'm saying, oh well, you can't be successful in law school, or you're gonna be stuck in life forever because you're doing this option. Because that's not true. But it's like if I was you, I would probably I would err toward the smarter side of it, and I weigh that heavily in my mind, and so I would do this. Plus, I also think you could score higher. Like I don't think you're at your limit yet, right? So you have more potential. It's just a lot. I think the tough conversation is for a lot of people is. And it depends, but is that higher score and is that extra financing in terms of getting more money from schools or whatever, is that worth waiting a year of their life? A lot of people are connected to emotionally to the idea that their life is slipping them by and that they need to get on it now, that they have to start now. If they don't, like, they'll only have 34 years to be a lawyer instead of 35, and that's the end of the world and that kind of thing, you know? And so that is a conversation I have with a lot of people where I just step back. I'm like, listen, first off, you're like 31, and I know that seems old, and maybe for you it might seem old, but honestly, like, even if you're a lawyer at 35, you could practice for 30 years. Like, you've barely been alive for 30 years. So it's okay, you know, and I'd rather you at 31 or 22 or 48 or whatever it is, I'd rather you not have $150,000 in debt, personally, for me, right? I think that debt's going to last longer than the stress you may have from waiting a year of law school. That's going to stick with you longer, I think. And so I just try to get my perspective on it. And usually it leans toward get a higher score and wait a year. Some people, I've had some situations where that's not the case, though. It kind of depends.
Yeah. Well, especially if people have money from other sources or something like that, you know.
Right. Or if there's like, you know, there are a few times where there's like a dire need, whether it's familial or whatever, there's a dire need to like get on, like you need to leave the situation and go to law school and get going, whatever. And if that's the case, I'm like, listen, honestly, just take the 155 or take the 160 and just roll with it and just go. Like, yes, it's gonna cost a little bit more, but this is you get out.
What's your experience? What's your experience with this? Sometimes people ask. It's usually, as far as I've seen, it's only been women asking on the Facebook group, like, hey, my partner's not being supportive of my desire to go to law school. Have you had experience with that with your students, or, you know, what do you?
Not a lot with my I mean, if it is a student issue, or if it is usually with my students, I haven't, to my knowledge, I don't think anyone's ever brought it up with me. I've seen a few women. I have seen one guy post about it too, actually, one time. I mean, but regardless, that's tough. And I think the thing that makes me laugh is I love the spirit of the group. But a lot of people, the minute someone posts that, everyone goes, drop them, break up. It's done. It's over. Get a divorce, whatever it is like, just get rid of them. Like, they're not worth it. And like, yes, I mean, I think people should support each other, whatever. But that's tricky. It's tricky for two reasons. One, there's the whole, you know, love versus career debate. And if there's ever that divide, what do you do? Because, you know, good love can be rare, a good career can be rare. So that's kind of tough. And then also, you got to realize that for a lot of people, we're also entrenched in the LSAT world. So we all know what it's like. But someone from the outside may not be aware of just how rigorous it is or how stressful it is or whatever it is. They may not know what it's like. And so for you to say like, oh, well, your husband sucks, he doesn't know what it's like, and so drop him. It's like, well, maybe you should talk to him first and just kind of, I don't know. I mean, I'm nowhere near a marriage counselor, but I wouldn't necessarily.
You're something close, right?
Me?
I'm just kidding.
I mean, and I'm sure you've experienced too, where a lot of people, I've had some sessions where it's like, listen, forget these logic games. Let's just chat about what's going on in your life for a second, because we need to fix this first, and then we can worry about ordering games, whatever it is, you know. That's not as important as about what's going on right now. But I mean, it's a tough decision. If I was in that shoes, I would probably take a Facebook group advice. I'd probably take advice from a Facebook group with a grain of salt, you know. Those spousal issues are those, if they're not married, if it's a partner thing, I don't know, that's something that should be like a one-on-one conversation with someone you really trust, or just, I don't know. But ideally, I would hope that, people are supportive and, that, or you can balance or work it out. It's tough. I don't know. It's a tough line.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah. I know when me and my wife had our kid,
mm-hmm.
my daughter, the plan was I was going to be home I was running some business at the time, and she was going to keep working at her job. And we scrapped that in like 3 days because we saw like the biological reality of raising a newborn and the mother, like, I mean, you could ignore the kid's desire to be with the mother, but I don't think that's
Sure.
maybe good for the kid or something. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter,
I don't
but
know. Yeah.
it seemed like we had to revisit that plan real quickly, and for the kids' sake, and as we've been raising our daughter, who's now 3, almost 3, that's been sort of a constant issue. It's like a lot of women want to work, and they have things that they've been doing before they had a kid, and but then there's also like the realities of the household management and child care and all this stuff, and it can be so I could imagine a male partner maybe correctly saying, maybe it's not the best decision for especially if we're planning on having kids or this or that. First is the LSAT, then it's law school, then it's bar exam, then it's late nights as an attorney or whatever, and maybe it's not the best decision for everybody. I don't know, but anyway, what anything else that you want to talk about today?
Well, I mean, then I was gonna kind of just tie it with a bow right there and say, even like going on to, not only because we started this conversation with what the test can have, what impact it can have on you emotionally, but it's like, man, like this whole I got to study thing, I gotta go to law school for 3 years. Like, I think another thing that people should really think about is the impact it's gonna have on the circle of people around you. Like, I mean, you might be cutting, you don't have to, but you might be cutting social events out. You might not be able to do X, Y, and Z because you're in law school for 3 years. You kind of do have to plan, and I mean, this is real. You do have to plan where you're gonna live, when you're gonna have a family, if you're gonna have a family, who you're gonna be with. Like that all, because it's such a big commitment to go to law school and take the LSAT and be a lawyer, that kind of thing. Your circle of people is gonna be affected, and so on the topic of your emotional well-being with the LSAT, that's another thing you got to think about. It's like not only you take care of yourself, but you have to think about the other people in life and how this process is going to affect them. And, I mean, it could be, well, I don't really care what other people think, so I'm going to do whatever I want, and that's fine. Or I really care, maybe I should rethink about this, then that's another conversation. And so, but it's worth considering because it's not only going to affect you, but everyone else. And so the bottom line is that it's a big deal. It's a big decision. If you really want to be a lawyer, I think you should absolutely do it, but it's worth getting the full plot and having a really good game plan of here's my timeline, here's what I'm doing, here's how I'm going to do it, and here's how it might affect me, and here's how it might affect you. And just having that all out on the table could be really, really good in the beginning or near the beginning, so there's not a lot of just unexpectedness or lapse in communication, that kind of thing. Something like that,
right. And that's sort of what lawyers do a lot of, is plan all the details out so that especially lawyers who aren't like necessarily like trial lawyers. Trial lawyers, that's when everything has already hit the fan and now it's time to fight. But like lawyers in general, they're like, okay, what about this eventuality? Well, let's put this in the contract. What happens if this? And, maybe get started on like planning those details out, not just winging it, because winging it doesn't work. I mean, sometimes, but usually,
it's rare.
Yeah,
it's rare. It really is.
And one last thing I'll say is that I think that the burden of law school and the bar exam and all kinds of other things after the LSAT can actually be minimized by developing the skills that you'll develop while studying for the LSAT to get a very high score. And so not only is there the money aspect, which is why I think pretty much everybody should be trying to get a very high score on the LSAT, but also like you don't want to be putting yourself through hell because you haven't developed your reading skills well enough for 3 years in law school. And then, you know, on the bar exam, holy crap. If you think the LSAT's hard, I mean, the bar exam, that's a lot more stuff.
Yeah.
I think you don't have to get a perfect score. You know, nobody's shooting for a perfect score really. They just want to pass. Usually people don't even know how you scored. So it's a lower threshold, but it's a higher burden in some sense. And there's a lot of reading. It's just constant reading, constant writing, and just get ready for it. And if you're not, and so there's really, because of the money aspect for American students, there's really no reason to rush into it. And then on top of that, these are good skills that you need to have. If you're learning from a good tutor, you're going to be learning valuable stuff for your law school career, your life, whatever. And so I really don't see a need to rush it. And most students that have been studying before they talk with me, they do end up pushing it back because they planned on one thing, but that was before they knew what they were doing and why they were doing it exactly. And
but that's
so
life.
Usually it makes sense to push it back.
Yeah, I mean that's literally like, I mean that's life. A lot of times you plan on one thing, and when does life ever really go as you plan? You know, I mean, just like, and it's all about just how you adapt and how you just go with it and overcome it. And you know, if you do it, you're gonna be great. You know, you'll be fine. So yeah, man, really good talking points today. This has been a really good discussion. So
Cool.
yeah, it's been a good first discussion. Hopefully there's some more to come too. But I guess, I mean, yeah, we'll probably end up posting this. I mean, I think it was a good discussion to post. And so, you know, if anyone ever has any questions, I guess we can kind of put our information up or whatever, they can comment or whatever it may be.
I leave it up to you. Do whatever you want with the video.
For sure, man.
If you need help or anything, I don't think you do, but you know, whatever.
All right, man. Well, then listen, good talk. Let's be in touch soon again, and we'll plan another one of these pretty soon. Okay.
All right. Cool.
Awesome, man. Have a good one.